If American-made knives are important to you, you should definitely watch this video. Welcome back to the channel, folks. I am Matt, and I hope you're all doing well. Now, today I want to cover knives that I think have the best value when it comes to American-made knives. Now, there are some American-made things out there that are under $100 from brands like Behr & Sons or Buck or Case, but a lot of those don't have super great steel. I'm not going to get into an argument about, what components are made in the US and what aren't. There's been some debate over that over the years. But what we're going to talk about here are knives that have premium steel, so pretty expensive steel, that are the best priced in their category, in my opinion. So none of these are cheap, right? I mean, you could definitely make the argument these are all expensive. That's totally fine. But when comparing to other USA-made knives on the market, I want to talk about what I think is the best value. Right now, we're seeing American-made knives, go anywhere from $150 for MagnaCut and G10 all the way up to $400 for MagnaCut and G10. Some people in my lovely state of Montana are definitely on the higher end there. And so I wanted to talk about what I think is your best value. So let's jump into it. We're going to start off with Hogue. That's a brand that I think you have to cover in this category. Right when it comes to one of the best values out there, you got to talk about Hogue and Kershaw kind of in the same breath. One of my favorites from Hogue is the Misto here. So you have well heat-treated MagnaCut. They're shooting for around 62, 63 from my understanding, and any testing I've seen was around 63. This has rich light scales, so it's like a paper micarta, but it feels nice while being lightweight. Feels a lot better than like polymer and stuff like that. Pretty interesting spear point blade, good amount of blade as well. I would call this about a medium, EDC knife. It's got really nice action as well, running on phosphor bronze washers. The one thing that I find with crossbar lock knives that run on phosphor bronze washers is they're a little bit harder to center and keep centered. This one's not bad, but I found that with Benchmade over the years too. I think there's a little less forgiveness when it comes to phosphor bronze washers compared to bearings. And so, it's just a little bit harder to center. That's kind of my one gripe and one thing worth mentioning. If you're like super OCD and you can't handle your knife being just a hair off, that from my experience happens more often with knives with phosphor bronze washers. But the action on phosphor bronze is fantastic. It feels glassy. I love it. This feels very similar to a lot of Benchmade's action out there once you get them worked in. And I would say that for the price, they're giving you more than what Benchmade would do. Really like the topographic design on those scales. Really nice looking pivot right there. You got some color accents on the thumb studs. A nice reversible clip as well. I like the way that they do their stone wash. That looks really good. And it's about a medium as far as the Omega springs go. Not as light as like Kershaw, but also not as heavy as some other brands out there like, the Bulldog Rev B from TRM. Now, this one usually you can get for around 150 bucks. You also have the Deca here. This is like the first run Deca. I got this when the Deca first came out. And so this is the 20CV version, but now you can get a polymer version in MagnaCut, sometimes for as low as like 115 bucks, when it's on sale. Now, just beware. When I first started hand sharpening, when I first started to learn, I used this knife and I totally jacked it up and haven't tried to fix it since. I haven't cut with this for years. And so, disregard the edge. But they do a really good job on the Deca as well. This is the G10 20CV version, which is a little bit more. But like I said, you can get the polymer version with MagnaCut for, fairly inexpensive when it comes to this realm of knives. And they're heat treating their MagnaCut really, really well. Now, really, Hogue's main competitor here when it comes to that sort of $150 range, MagnaCut, good heat treat, crossbar lock, is going to be Kershaw and the Bel Air Series. The action on this is even a little bit snappier. It just feels a little different because it is running on bearings. And I found with these Kershaw knives, they're almost always centered right out of the gate, and you don't have to do much for adjustment. I like the XL a little bit better than the regular here. So this one here is the clip point, and right here we have the XL in like their reverse Tanto, the first blade shape they came out with. So I like the XL a little bit better. It's not a super large knife, more of a medium sized knife, compared to the Misto here. They're about the same size. Very, very similar in size, and weight feels pretty similar as well. I would say that the Kershaw here feels a little more heavy duty. It's a little more no nonsense. It's got that grippy G10, exposed liners. It feels a little more heavy duty than the Hogue, but both of these are made super duper well. And, I think you could do a lot of work with either of them. Just, G10 compared to Richlight, the G10 feels a little bit tougher. This one does have liners as well, and they're nested down in there. I love both of these knives. If you ask me to choose between these two, I would probably pick every other one every other day because I go back and forth. Now, if you want a little bit smaller knife, I really like the regular Bel Air as well. It's just, I like the XL a little bit more. And this one has aluminum scales, which makes it an even better value in my opinion. And now you can get aluminum on the XL. The one downside here is that the XL pricing seems to be going up. I've found it before in that 150, 160 range. Now it seems to be getting closer to 170, 180, and they're coming out with new versions of it with different steel, with micarta and with aluminum, like they already have with the regular XL. And so now you can still get the regular in that 150 range, sometimes lower, but this guy seems to be about 20, 30 bucks more. Would love it if they were, a little closer in price. I know you got a little more steel and materials here, but I don't think it needs to be 30 bucks more. But, it is what it is. Still, great value for what you get when comparing it to the USA made market. And just to say it one more time, no one's saying that these are cheap. Right? They're still an expensive knife. You can obviously get more for your money when it comes to a China-made knife. But if USA-made manufacturing is important to you, you really trust the company, you want to make sure that that heat treat is perfect, and you want to have a good warranty in the States or whatever, then a lot of people like USA-made. And I get it. I do too. And it's just, supporting your country, obviously, as well. Now, again, if you have to pick between these two, I can't tell. The Misto's probably a little bit better value now because this one's, 145, 150. This one's more like 170 now. But, these two are about the same price. And I think Hogue does a little bit more when it comes to details. It's using Richlight, which feels a little more lightweight than the G10, but they have really nice details on the pivot here. And I like what they do with their thumb studs. Both just great knives, and these are, up there as far as the best value when it comes to USA-made knives. Also in that sort of 150 range, I think you got to talk about Spyderco's lightweight series. Now, these can be around 140, 150, depends on the day, depends on where you get it. This is their salt version, so you got MagnaCut here in the Para 3. Good heat treat on that as well, and they have their FRN scales. I like Spyderco's FRN. It's some of the most durable feeling, quote unquote, plastic scales, even though it's not really what it is, on the market. It doesn't have flex. It doesn't flex as much as stuff like Bug Out or stuff from Heretic or, other things out there. It feels really nice. They do a good job with this type of scale, but, a lot of people would call it a downgrade compared to, G10 and even Richlight here. So you got a lot of different knives you can get in the lightweight series here, and there's a lot of steels you can get. This is an older Manix 2, sorry. This is the one in BD1N, but I think you can get this in other steels now as well in that sort of 150 range. I think the BD1N version is even cheaper than that. And to kind of jump into more Spyderco here, another knife that's just a great deal would be like a G10 Manix 2. This is a carbon fiber version. It's a special version that I've had for years and years with Crewwear steel, but you can get the G10 version of this, not the lightweight version with like S30V, for around 170, 180, I believe, sometimes cheaper on sales. And I would say this is one of the next best values out there. These are a great knife. They're super ergonomic. The crossbar lock is more robust than the other ones that I showed because it's not really a crossbar lock. They use like a ball bearing lock, and you have two individual coil springs, I believe. And so you don't have omega springs. You're less likely to have a spring failure. And it's just one of those that you could beat and use forever. And it feels just super duper solid. Great action on these as well. So I'm a big Manix 2 fan. It's one of the better deals when it comes to Spyderco USA made knives. They're a little bit lower than, things like the Para 3, Para 2, so on and so forth. It jumps us into the $200 range, which would be a Para 3 here with G10, and you know, a little bit more than that, a PM2 with G10. This is the salt version. This one's going to be a little more than the regular G10 version because it's got MagnaCut and not S30V or Spy 27 or S45 VN. And so if you wanted to get just the regular G10 version of this, it's usually around $209. The salt version's like $229. Spyderco's definitely gone up in price over the years, and no one's saying these are like super duper cheap, but again, when comparing G10 with this type of steel and obviously a super duper strong lock on these, there's a lot of knives that are way more expensive that give you less. I really like the Spy 27 versions. I'm a big blue fan, obviously, but I like Spy 27 as well. It's similar to S45 VN. Now, I'm not talking about Benchmade a whole bunch here because they're just a little bit on the higher end for what you get. You know, a bug out's still around 200 bucks. This is the Mini Adira. This can be anywhere from 200 to 225 usually, and it still uses a you know, plastic type of scale, and I think I like Spyderco's, you know, plastic, quote unquote, more than this. I think this is an FRN or GRN, but you know, it feels okay. It's okay, but I think, you know, with these other brands I'm showing, you get a bit more for your money. I'm not as much of a Benchmade hater as some people are, but they need to keep up with the times a little bit. And also when it comes to heat treat, they don't seem to score as well as some of these other brands, at least from the tests that I've seen. Now, next up, I want to talk about Microtech. Now, a lot of people are like, what, you're talking about good value and Microtech in the same video? But that's kind of where we've gotten now in the year 2026. Now, with the full-size MSI, you can get the polymer version of this, which I have different scales on it, but you can get the polymer version of this for like 195 bucks for a big knife. This is the biggest knife that I'm going to show here. Not the mini MSI, this is the full-size MSI. So now do the math there, 195 bucks, and you can have a polymer knife that's pretty large, and their polymer is actually done really, really well. It feels nice and sturdy even with those polymer scales. But then you can also buy scales for it. I got these from Rip's Garage Tech, some micarta scales. I think they're around 50 bucks, and then you're looking at like 245 with the M390 MK steel. I think they heat treat this pretty well from the testing that I've seen. It's a lot of blade here, a very durable knife for sure. I've heard of like cops and people like that carrying these. And so then you're into it like, you know, 245. But if you wanted to just stick with the polymer, that'd be fine. And you're sub 200 for a full-size work knife that's done really, really well, made in America, and has one of the strongest crossbar style locks that I'm going to show here because it has the ram lock where you have that coil spring right there and a block as opposed to a smaller crossbar and omega springs. So, you know, this is definitely a knife that'll last people a super duper long time, but it's not cheap. But, you know, when comparing here to other stuff on the market nowadays, it seems to be a better deal maybe than it once was compared to some other stuff out there that's USA made. And then also you got, you know, the MSI Mini here. This one's around 275, I believe, but it is with aluminum scale. So, you know, you don't need to buy scales on it. Just same with like the Amphibian Mini and the M-Stitch that I did a video on. Those already have aluminum scales on it. They have a lot of different flavors, different styles. And so, you know, 275, but again, now we're talking about a little bit upgraded materials here where you got a really nice lock. You got a little bit more going on with the knife as far as the accents, things like that. And you're spending a little bit more than maybe, you know, a Spyderco here. But there's, like I said, a little bit more going on. Not something that I necessarily think is a screaming deal. I would love these to be closer to 200, but I really want them to do a polymer version of the MSI Mini because I like this size more, and make that like 160 or 175. That'd be great, and I think that that would do well. But there's no denying that this lock is just freaking awesome. Some people don't like it because they don't like the action on it, but you really have to break it in, and it just feels so durable. And it's got more tension to it than your regular crossbar lock. But that's part of what I like about it. You know that that thing is really locked in, and you're not going to have issues with any omega springs or anything like that. Now, another category I wanted to talk about is like small batch. USA made stuff, right? That can be even more expensive because they're making it, in small batches. A lot of times it's just a one-man show or just a couple people. They don't have the buying power that a Spyderco or a Kai USA Kershaw has. And so it costs them a bit more to produce it, right? And a company that I think is well priced, if you take that stuff into account, is American Blade Works. This is their Model 1 V7 in aluminum, and you can get this for $250, and it's made by a dude in a small shop with heat-treated MagnaCut. I think he's hitting like 64 HRC on this. He does a cool like step-down pattern on his blades there. Really, really nice blade shape for EDC as well. They are a liner lock. All right, but they're well-made knives. You got some titanium accents. You got a titanium clip, a titanium backspacer. I liked it so much that I have a second one, and I don't have many knives where I have more than one of the same knife. This is the micarta version that I actually got first, and this one has been more of a user for me, and I just like the action on him too. I think he does a good job. It's got a back flipper right here. I like that blade, and it's got thumb studs as well on bearings. I did try to oil these micarta scales, and I realized that with this type of micarta, it's not as good to oil it. It doesn't take as much, and so it's a little blotchier than it once was, but I think that that'll wear down in time. Anyway, $250 obviously isn't cheap, but if you take into account the fact that you have MagnaCut here, all made in the USA, made by a small batch shop, there's other small batch shops out there that are charging way, way more for something similar. It's especially, impressive with an aluminum version as well. Also, I like that you can flip the pocket clip on these, and they're just a nice knife, very ergonomic. I love American Blade Works, really like his slip joint as well. Now, if you want USA made and titanium, I kind of scoured the internet over the last week. It seems like still the brand that you're going to get the best price on when it comes to titanium and USA made is Zero Tolerance. Now, this Zero Tolerance is pretty old. I think this thing is, maybe 2017 is when I bought it. 2018 maybe. I don't even think they make this version still, but you can get a titanium knife from them, like the Hinderer version, for around $300. And if you didn't know, they're also Kai USA, so same, ownership as Kershaw, and their action's always great. They do an awesome job on their knives. This one's a little bit on the stiffer side because I cleaned it the other day. But, I've played with a lot of ZTs over the years, and they do a good job. This is, I reversed the clip on it. But they also make some more kind of hard use knives as well. Gotten a little bit away from that more recently, more the last few years, but they still have a few, hard use styles. I have another one here. This one is not titanium, but this one is G10 and just built like a brick shithouse. I think you can still get this version, the 0350. This one has the assisted opening as well, but just made super duper durable. What's this other one? The 0095BW. Okay, and this one's S35VM, but I think they're using, more MagnaCut and stuff like that now. Now, if you're a baller and you want like one knife and you're going to spend, good money on it, I still think Chris Reeve is one of the best, one of my favorites as far as their manufacturing goes. This is an older one. This is a Sabenza 21. Their manufacturing, the way that they look, they're kind of timeless. I mean, this one I think I bought in 2018. Not cheap though. You can get the mini version for like $425, $450, I think. And the bigger version here is like $550. But compared to what some other people are charging, it doesn't seem that crazy anymore. It kind of did back when I bought it, but nowadays doesn't seem that crazy when you got other manufacturers charging $800, $900, $1,000 for a really nice, small batch, high-end USA made knife. If you were wanting to go down this road, I would suggest checking out Chris Reeve. It doesn't have the craziest action. I think the 31's a little bit better, but I can still thumb flick it. This is the Insingo blade shape. It is a frame lock. This is a left-handed version. Also, Hinderer would be worth checking out. They're one of the oldies but goodies in my opinion. Also, Demko. Demkos are awesome. Their USA mades usually start at around $450. But if you wanted to, get something from an American company that's then outsourced and made, in a different country, you could check out Demko's other stuff like the 80-20.5 and things like that. And that's kind of a whole nother video. But then you got, American companies that still outsource manufacturing. And maybe you're someone that would rather, support them than a completely foreign company or something. And so then, you're fine with that. But I'm not going to make this video too long, so maybe we'll explore that another day and my favorite knives that are from an American company but are outsourced. But anyway, feel free to tell me what I missed. Again, I'll say it one more time, not at all saying, hey, these knives are cheap, or hey, these knives are just a great price. But when you're trying to weigh this against other stuff on the market, I think that this stuff gives you the best value for your money when it comes, sorry, I'm sunburnt, guys, when it comes to premium blade steel and USA made. So drop down in the comments, let me know what you think. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and check out one of my others. That about wraps it up. Until next time, thanks for watching.